So no, you don't do that. You indicate that they're going to probably do that when they get older, but not when they're cubs. That's the only thing that is the one thing that didn't need to be indicated from Bob Thomas's review, as he pointed out. It's the one thing you don't do. And again, if you're going to do 3 more sequels, as he has found out and has been announced, you need to focus on making these sequels more consistent to the original film that they're based upon. But also, if you're going to keep the Cub characters for the next 3 sequels that are going to span from 2016 to probably just 2017, or if not throughout all of 2016, you need to grow the characters up. I mean, if the next one is, if the synopsis for the next one is they're going to learn lessons about being in the great outdoors, first of all, what's the deal with that when they're in the great outdoors to begin with? And second of all, if you're going to do that, you need to age the pups older to the point that maybe they're half the size of the parents now. I mean, one thing I will say, let's say about Goofy, about Goof Troop, its movie, a Goofy movie, and its sequel, an extremely Goofy movie, is what Max, they appropriately aged him from being like 11 to 12 years old in the series to 15, 16 in the movie, to 15, 16, to actually 14, 15 I should say in the Goofy movie, to basically 5 years later to about 19, 20 years old in an extremely Goofy movie. And that there is consistency. Was an extremely Goofy movie just as good as a Goofy movie? No. But just like the other Disney sequels that were hits, even though the animation wasn't as good, it was still decently received because it had a decent story. And oh, by the way, it stayed consistent with its continuity. That is what the Alpha Omega series needs to start doing with possibly these last 3 sequels. Get back to staying consistent and stay true to the continuity, as well as, by doing so, age the Cub characters to the point that when you get to that, what's it going to be? Alpha Omega, what was it? We know how the Holiday Adventure one was 2. We know the Great Wolf Games was 3. We know the Cave one, the Halloween one, was 4. We know this one was 5. So when you get to Alpha Omega 8, make sure the kids are grown up and ready to venture off on their own. I mean, if you're going to put Claudette along with Fleet, that's something you can have them grow up on. Have the relationship grow while they grow up. You know, don't keep them as cubs because it's going to be like, what? Did they find the freaking fountain of youth where they live? It's not consistent with continuity. And it's going to be like, what? A lot of people, even though they know this is fiction, they're going to be like, what? Are you stuck in a time loop? Are you stuck in a time warp or something? You can't just age them and age them? You can't do that? I mean, that's stupid. It really is. It really is stupid. And with these last 3 sequels, we can only hope and pray that they do something decent. They may not be good sequels, they may not be good final movies to wrap up the franchise. But try to stay consistent with them. Try to stay true to the continuity that the original movie started, and do the more realistic thing at times, because a lot of fans have pointed this out to you. Age the kid characters to the point that they're at the appropriate age to where maybe they can defy, maybe they have more of a right to defy and disrespect their parents because they're going through that puberty, that adolescent age, that pre-teen, adolescent, young adult age. I mean, the one thing that the first one did is they started off by showing us a pre-teen, adolescent Humphrey, Lily, and Kate. That was the first thing they did. And guess what? Even though we went from that spring or that fall spring into the next spring, guess what? They aged them. You can see the difference not only in the facial features, but in the size of the characters themselves. They went and became bigger. They grew older. They grew up. They weren't small anymore. They were the size, they were full grown. And that's what needs to be done with these cub characters if you're going to consistently have them. I mean, you're not selling any merchandise with them, plush dolls or anything like that to keep them young. So age them. Do the right thing and age them. Don't keep them the way they are. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, the Swan Princess doesn't do that. We don't know, because I don't think they ever had any kids as far as I know. But there have been, now I'm not going to say that a lot of movies haven't followed this trait, okay? I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. I know that the whole Land Before Time franchise, that, I don't know, back in 93, 94, started doing the sequels, which constantly kept going and going and going and going and going and going and going until they spawned the series and then kept going and going and going. I know that they kept those characters young. And yeah, it was stupid because they didn't age them. Well, here's the thing. They have an excuse. That excuse, if you will, is that setting, whether those movies and series was good or not, that setting was in prehistoric times. So they could do whatever they want. That is totally unlimited to them. They can keep them as young as they want. They don't have to grow them up that quickly. They don't. They don't have to do that. Okay, they don't have to grow them up so quickly. Because they got them set in a time period where basically they could stay young. There's no real definitive year in or year out. And I know some people might point out and say, well, that's not totally true, Brian. There have been several movies that have shown different seasons. They should have grown. That might be true, but they will come out and say that they have an out. That might be true, but I guarantee you, if you were to speak to some of those animators and story writers behind those sequels, they would say, well, we have an out clause, and that is, you never know when the sequel takes place. Wrong, because some of the characters they meet in previous movies show up in the series, and those characters that they meet in the series show up in the movies that follow. So again, Alpha and Omega is not the only ones at fault with this. So is the Land Before Time series. But again, that's Universal. And oh, by the way, Universal's also done this as well when they've done the frequent prequels to American Tail. Or the midquels between American Tail and American Tail 5 Goes West. Why? Because they keep characters like Tanya the same age as she was in the first movie. They bring a character back that became 5's best friend in the first movie, as well as the love interest that was in the first movie. They get basically, they keep the characters the same age, so they're not so innocent. The one thing the American Tail series did is not only did it follow suit and continue American Tail 5 Goes West, the adventures there, but it kept the characters, the age that they were at that time. And again, some people will say, well, they're stuck in a time period. Well, they have an outlet for an excuse because, oh, by the way, you don't know exactly what time in the West, in Western times, this is taking place in. And that might be true. And that's the one thing Universal will come out with. They would say, you don't know exactly what time period or what, this is all taking place in. Because, now we have an outlet. But the series didn't do prequel episodes or anything. No, as far as I know, they kept things going. They kept it going. They kept it in continuity to even if they did a sequel to American Tail 5 Goes West that served as a finale to the series or just continued the series, they either would have kept the characters young like Tanya and Fievel, or they would have aged them. And that's one thing you got to give them credit when they did the sequel. They didn't keep Tanya young like she was in the first one. No, they aged her. They made her a freaking preteen adolescent. They made her a freaking basically a pre to mid-teen teenage character basically an early to mid-teen character, or early to mid-teenage character that was growing up. That's what they did. And the thing is, that was based in the same continuity and context as the original film. And that also took place in a different time period, a different era, basically between the 1890s and 1900s, supposedly. That's when it took place. They aged the characters. Heck, even when Secret of Nim got that sequel, which a lot of people have panned and felt was unworthy of even being a sequel, the Timothy to the Rescue, guess what they did? They aged the characters. MGM aged the freaking characters. They didn't keep them the same age as they were before. They aged them. They aged them to the point that the daughters are grown up now. The sons are grown up now. And even through that, they aged the sons even more so. If not more, they aged young Timmy a little more so. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. What about Morton and the sisters? They didn't age much. Well, they were basically full grown at the time. Timmy is the youngest. He's basically the youngest out of the four. So basically, him, from an age standpoint, was getting to the point that he was going to age anyway. He was growing up. That's why he went on that journey to Thorn Valley. That's why he made that journey, because that was part of his destiny to become the hero that Nicodemus prophesied him to be, even though that was something they just threw in for no reason. And he grew up there within a year's time. That's what he did. He grew up within a year's time and became full grown. And he stayed within continuity, in context, because of the fact that his brother and sisters were already full grown. You get the point. And you took a look at Mrs. Frisbee and the Shrew, or Auntie Shrew as they call her, and they've aged them. They even put freaking gray hair on Mrs. Frisbee. The point is, some movies, whether a sequel takes place years later, like in the case of Secret of Nim, I think that took place, what, 16, 17 years later? Even though that took place in 98, 99, it still stayed in context. It aged the characters. When 5 Goes West came out, that came out essentially, what, 6 years after the original? And that aged the characters. And it stayed all in the same context and continuity. True, there might have been some change-ups here and there, but they stayed true. That's the point that Bob Show, was pointing out when he talks about some of these movies, especially the Alpha Omega series. As good and watchable and as decent and as enjoyable as the first movie is, okay, and it is, there's no doubt about that. And as good as the animation and everything is there, and as good as the characterization is of the characters there, the sequels need to follow suit, mostly though, not in animation, if they don't have to, but they should. But, well, somewhat in better quality animation, not on par as what you saw in the theatrical, in the first one, the theatrical movie, but basically somewhat semi on par to something decent in the eyes of some. But still, mostly in characterization, continuity, and context. And again, if you're going to have kid characters, age them. Because in real life, any animal, any mammal, whether it's a dog, a wolf, or whatever, within a year or so time, they get bigger, they grow, and by the next year or so, they're full grown, even though they might be a year, even though they just might have turned a year, they are freaking full grown. They are. They are full grown. True, they might grow just a tiny bit more, but they're essentially after a year full grown. And that's the point. If you're going to keep doing these sequels, you got to be realistic, and you got to say, let's age the freaking Cub characters so it makes it more appropriate for them to go through these situations of being in love, being rebellious towards your parents if you have to, being disrespectful because you're going through these certain phases and ages. Make them the freaking age they need to be. Make them the freaking appropriate ages. Don't keep them as little Cub characters because you think it's cute. No. You make them get bigger and older. And that is my suggestion to Crest Animation and Lionsgate, if Lionsgate is still distributing the movies. Make sure when you're doing the last 3 sequels that you finally do the right thing. You keep the story in continuity. You keep the characters true to what they were in the first movie. And with the Cub characters that you introduced in the sequel, finally age them, make them grow up. Because again, if you're going to put Claudette with Fleet, make them grow up. Make that relationship grow with them growing up. You have, Runt? You have him basically being the more sophisticated philosopher kind of one, or whatever. You know, and you have him in the family vacation saying, one day when he's leader, he's going to do this and that. Have him grow up, have him get bigger, and have him make that happen. Heck, he's Runt. Make him live up to his name. Make him grow up, but not as big as his sister or brother are going to be. But make him someone that will, even at his small size, be worth getting interested in. That's what you need to do. That's what they need to do. That's what any movie that follows this same kind of path needs to do. If you're going to introduce kid characters in a sequel, whether it's a theatrical sequel or a direct-to-video sequel, if you're going to do more sequels after that, make sure the characters age. You don't have to age the parents per se, but you need to age the kid characters to make it more relatable and maybe even entertaining. As well as, like I say, keep all characters, even the main ones like Humphrey, Kate, Lily, and Garth. Make them true to themselves. Make them true to the characters they were in the first movie. And give the kids, as they get older, a little bit of those personality traits mixed in with their own. The personality traits of the parents. Mixed in with their own. Do that, and I guarantee you, the last 3 movies, if you do that, if you follow the formula of keeping the main characters of Humphrey and Kate, maybe even Lily and Garth, true to what they were in the movie, true to themselves, true to their character traits, keep everything within the same continuity, not make stuff up, as well as keep it in context, mostly in reality-based wise, and grow certain characters up to being full-grown adults, or full-grown adult wolves, whatever, then you might be able to finish this off on a good note. You might have more people behind your final 3 sequels. Heck, you might even have Bob Thomas himself saying, hey, these last 3 were pretty good because they finally did something right. They finally aged the characters. They finally aged the Cub characters. They're finally making them physically grow up. They finally kept Kate and Humphrey, Lily and Garth true to their original selves from the movie. Kept true to themselves from the original movie. You might have that, and I'm sure Bob's not the only one that feels that way. You know, I look at these sequels and I'm like, okay, obviously the Alpha Omega franchise is popular enough to warrant more sequels, but seriously? You're going to keep the Cub characters the same? And when I watch Bob's reviews, it's no wonder I'd rather watch the first one. It's no wonder he would rather watch the first one.